All right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center. Welcome to the Wanda Coleman Theater. My name is Quentin Ring. I'm Beyond Baroque's Executive Director. And we are thrilled to have you all here this evening for the Los Angeles launch of Stories from the Center of the World, New Middle East Fiction. Yes. We'll get into the program in just a second. I want to say a few words about Beyond Baroque to start with. I'd like to begin by acknowledging Beyond Baroque's presence here on Tongva land. We acknowledge the wrong done to indigenous peoples through settler colonialism, genocidal practices, and the violent dispossession of their land. As an arts organization, Beyond Baroque is committed to uplifting indigenous writers, communities, their narratives, and their art. Beyond Baroque is very much a space and a community dedicated to the artistic possibilities of language. That is to say that we are a space for poets and writers. We have writing workshops. We have free weekly workshops on Monday and Wednesday. Monday is fiction, Wednesday is poetry. We have regular master classes, seminars. This Saturday, in fact, we're hosting a table reading seminar on Hannah Arendt's What is Freedom? That's sort of an ongoing seminar led by Renee Petropoulos, who's here tonight. So I encourage you to come back for that. And we have a reading and performance series as well. Pretty much every weekend right here in this theater, we have poetry readings, fiction readings, talks, performances, music, film, you name it. It sort of happens here in this theater at least once a year, if not more often. We also have an art gallery. You'll notice upstairs and in the lobby here, we have an exhibit that is Vincent Johnson's 17 Place Vendôme, which he's both an artist and a scholar, and he has been doing a lot of original research on the origins of the modern art world, starting in 18th century France, in the ways in which it was completely financed by the slave trade. And so a lot of original work has gone into that. He'll be in conversation next Thursday on May 23rd, if you guys want to come back for that as well. We can't do what we do without the support of our community. So if you are interested in becoming a member of Beyond Baroque, it costs as little as $60. If you become a member tonight, you'll get a tote bag, and you'll get free admission to events that we charge for. You'll keep events like this free. You'll get a discount on our workshops, and you'll get a discount on our bookstore. So please do support Beyond Baroque. Arts organizations are very fragile places in this country. There's not a lot of public funding for the arts. So if you have the means to do so, we would very much appreciate your support. And you can see Jenna in the bookstore or do it online. But especially a huge thanks, I want to give a huge thanks to our staff, first of all, for making this event happen, to Eric Alberg, who's running the show from the booth. Yes, please. To Yvonne Salinas, our programs manager, who put this all together, to Jimmy Vega, our associate director, and to Genesis Perez, our bookstore assistant, and to Michelle Raphael, our development director as well, who's here tonight. But above all, I want to give a thanks both to the writers who are in this book, and particularly to Jordan Elgrably, our host and the editor of the book for the evening. Just to say a little about the program, Jordan's going to introduce. We also have with us Nima Jafari as well, who's here. It's Nima. Special big thanks to Nima because he kind of filled in last minute. We just very enthusiastically joined the program, and we're absolutely thrilled to have him here to read and to be in conversation. So just to tell you a little bit about our participants tonight, Nima, as I said, is... sorry, I'm winging it because we didn't have the bio, but Nima is he's an actor, he's a soccer player, and he's a graduate of AMDA as well, and a very talented actor, and so I'm really glad to have him to read selections from the book. And then Jordan Elgrably is a Franco-American Moroccan writer and translator whose stories and creative nonfiction have appeared in numerous anthologies and reviews, including Apulé, Salmagundi, and the Paris Review. He's the editor of Stories from the Center of the World, New Middle East Fiction, and co-editor with Malu Halassa of Sumud, a New Palestinian Reader. Elgrably founded and edits the Markaz Review. Special thanks to the Markaz Review and the City Lights for co-sponsoring this program. So please, everyone, welcome Jordan Elgrably.
I want to thank Beyond Baroque and Quentin for agreeing to host us. It's great. And thank all of you for coming. I want to thank City Lights And also mention that if you already bought a book, you get a free Markaz bookmark. Okay? So you got to get that because they're pretty cool and they mark your book. I'll put them in the bookstore later. What I want to say about this book is that this is the fruit of a few years of labor from the Markaz Review, which we started during the pandemic in 2020. And this is a collection of 25 stories by writers from all over what we like to call the center of the world. In fact, you'll see that there's a map in here. And why do I call this the center of the world? Rather than use the CIA phrase, the Greater Middle East, I thought we should come back to our kind of our roots, Mesopotamia, ancient Iraq and Iran is where civilization started 7,000 years ago. And so it's a different way of reframing the conversation. The book is intended to say it's not about us and them, it's about all of us together. So what happens there happens here. And I feel very much, as Mandela said, that until the Palestinian people are free, none of us are free. And the stories in here help to humanize people from Iran, from Iraq, from Morocco, Somalia, Egypt, Palestine. There are a lot of countries and cultures represented here. Most of the stories were written in English. Quite a few were written in either Persian or Arabic. One story was written in French by Abdullah Taya from Morocco. I translated that one. So that's pretty much a little tour of the book. And the plan here is for Nima to come up and read a little bit, give you some of the flavor of the book. Then I'll come back and read a little bit from a story that I wrote and another one. And then we will take some questions, have a conversation. And afterwards, I invite all of you to go outside and enjoy some food and wine and good spirit. So thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you guys for being here. And before I start, I just want to thank Angela also for being here, because if it wasn't for her presence in my life, I wouldn't be able to relate to this stuff either. Asha and Haji by Hanif Qureshi. Call me Ezra. Call me Michael or Thomas. Call me Abu, Dedan, Ahmed. Call me Asha, trash or shit. Call me whatever, or no one or nothing. You already have more than enough names for me. In this place, my identity and even my nature changes from day to day. It is an effort for me to remember who I am. Like a child rehearsing his alphabet, when I wake up, I have to reacquaint myself with my history. That is because I am not recognized. I have no reflection here, except in her eyes. When she sees me, I come to life. If life is the accurate word, which it probably is not. Wearing my only shirt in the small shabby hotel room which we are forced to leave, I jerk about on my toes waiting for her. I see that I'm very thin now. Near death has something to say for it. It is a very odd thing, living every day in fear. At least you get to practice renunciation, but I have to say, a reluctant ascetic. At home, I never went to bed with less than 5 pillows. My few pathetic possessions, along with my sacred books, Hegel, Dostoevsky, Kafka, Kierkegaard, are in canvas bags. I hope they send a limousine because I'm not sure how much further I can walk. Something tragic has happened to my nervous system, which makes me twitchy. My head is too heavy and my body scarcely obedient. I'd have been better off as a cat. She was lucky to find a job as a maid here. For 2 weeks, she's been hiding me in her tiny room. We took turns to sleep on the plank of a bed until I made an unavoidable mistake. I had a terrible dream, screamed, and was discovered. Here, even your nightmares can betray you. In the future, and I also use this word with a laugh, I would sleep with tape over my mouth. She and I must get out again. Who knows where? They suggested I'm some kind of security risk or terrorist, and that it would be no trouble to them to report me to the police, who will interrogate me again. She begged them not to bother, since I have no religion and, I have to admit, no acknowledged beliefs. I am only a harmless bookworm, as soft in the head as ice cream. And no terrorist ever found inspiration in Kafka. And I'm far too lazy to start killing people. I don't give a damn for invasions or wars. I expect nothing less of humanity. But all this, what has happened, is an inconvenience too far. In my city far away, I ran a coffee shop. My books. You might find this odd, but they were my main concern even then. There's nothing like displacement to give you time to read. Kafka, Beckett, Hegel, Nietzsche, Montaigne. My father had passed them on to me. They were my mind and treasure, my single resource. When it was time to flee and everything was falling down, I rushed to the back of my cafe, which also functioned as a library and bookshop, pulling down whatever I could carry, filling my hold-all, other bags, and my pockets. In the new city, Haji and I had found ourselves working in the same house. Bain mostly employed women, but he needed men for some work. At first, I barely noticed her. She seemed quiet and humble, with her head bowed, wisely keeping out of trouble. None of us spoke much. This assembly of ghosts was in shock. Our mouths were shut. When I saw her looking at me, I wondered whether she'd seen me talking to myself. Late one evening, when we'd finished work and we were yet to be taken back to our accommodations, there was a rap on my cupboard door. I was inside, in my armchair reading. At this noise in my secret place, I was terrified. Was it now? I'd be punished and dismissed. Hearing her soft but urgent voice, "Asha, Asha, it's Haji!" I opened the door. She stepped past me and sat on a stool opposite my chair. Her intrusion seemed brave. I was puzzled. I waited for her to speak. "What's in that book?" she said at last. She pointed. "And in that one. And that one." "What do you think? Why do you ask?" She was able to admit that she wanted to talk to me, this small girl in her white work coat and white shoes. Two scared people sitting together in a cupboard. She asked me to say something about what I was reading. Would I explain it? I could tell she was clever and even educated, but only up to a certain level. Perhaps she had problems at school or with her family. She was thin and frail, yet with some determination to her. These visits were repeated over many nights. I saw that I had to clarify and simplify my thoughts. There's only so much most people would want to know about Hegel. But she was fascinated to hear about the master-slave relationship, the interdependence of the owner and the servant, leader and follower, creditor and debtor, how they're bound together. The eternal, impossible reflection. I was surprised. I became enthusiastic. I wanted her to know what I saw in this stuff, why I said it was more important than money, more important than most things people valued. "You're so kind. You can be my teacher," she said. Here, Freedom. Daniel Haghighi, translated from Persian by Salar Abdo. We were sitting on the balcony watching videos of the demonstrations in Tehran on our cell phones. I told her, this is the big one. This time they can't just roll things up like all the times before. She was resting her head on my chest, watching the screen. "Is it really possible?" Talk to me, Asghar. Tell me we'll be free. We could go to concerts from now on, go to the beach, and I could wear a bikini. Tell me it's not all a dream. It's not a dream, my love. It's real. We've turned into a nation of lions. But the other afternoon when you were away, it got pretty rough around here. They hurt a lot of people. I know, but it's different this time. Don't look at this nowhere town we live in. In the big cities, and not just in Tehran, no one's backing down. She did not skip a beat. Then I'm not wearing a hijab either from now on. I'm going to the salon to bleach my hair. Afterwards, I'm going to the city. City? What city? You just called this a nowhere town, and I agree. I want to go where the action is. Tehran, Mashhad, Tabriz, Isfahan, wherever. What about me? You can get yourself a new wife, darling. I don't want a new wife. But ours was an arranged marriage. Of course it was. Every marriage is arranged in this town. And what's wrong with that? Everything's wrong with it. My youth was wasted on us, my dear. I like you, but I don't love you. This town has slim pickings, and you and I got paired. Now I want out. She pulled herself upright, put the cell phone away, and stared into my eyes. If women are going to get their freedom, why should I spend the rest of my life with you? I don't even like a man with blue eyes. You don't like my blue eyes. I don't trust them. Then you're gonna find someone with brown eyes then. What I mean is, I'm not staying in this backwater anymore. Fine, we'll go to Rasht, maybe even Shiraz, but let's admit, Tehran's a bit expensive. She rolled her eyes. If this government goes, you'll have an army of women who love your light hair and blue eyes. Come, let's agree to get a divorce. Don't waste yourself on me, dearest. You're being serious? If this regime falls, you want a divorce? Yes. Not on my life. I am being honest with you, Asghar. How can you say you love me if you don't appreciate my honesty? I actually never said I loved you. See? If you don't love me, so much the more the reason we should go our separate ways. Are you insane? I am out there every day working myself stiff for a piece of bread and a roof over our heads, and you're talking about divorce. Asghar, whether you like it or not, I want a divorce. But why? Why? Because this life we live is empty. Empty! You think anyone will ever again want to watch a film with a woman wearing hijab once we're free? Our lives are a lie, my precious. A woman in her own kitchen wearing hijab because she in a movie or a TV series? Do I wear hijab in my kitchen? I shook my head. Exactly. It's all a big lie. Admit it. And now the big lie is ending. Get used to it. She got up and left without another word. Went to her mother's house like all the other times we'd had a falling out. And 2 days later, when she returned, I'd been thinking. I said, I'll give you back your dowry. Go do whatever the hell you want with it. And what do you want? She asked. A Peugeot. I've always wanted to drive a Peugeot. Without both of us to support, I can buy myself one of those beauties and move to Tehran and take my blue eyes with me. So all that talk of you are my one and only was just for show? I swear, the thought of freedom got me truly thinking, baby. You're not man enough yet for freedom. I was testing you to see what you do. You want a damn Peugeot? All of this? That's all you care about. But, no but. Let's watch some woman life freedom videos. What do you say? I say whatever you say, sweetheart. My one and only. Thank you.
All right, give it up for Nima Jafari. And another round of applause. He just became an American citizen.
You know, really quick, can I just say something? Since this book also talks about Afghans, and in Iran, we wouldn't be able to be the greatest country in the Middle East if we didn't have the help that we're getting from the rest of the people that are not born and raised in Iran. The United States of America, I had a gift and a curse when I came here. I spoke good English, and people assumed that I was just born and raised here. And it really threw me for a doozy, man. Great people, and things get lost in translation. The reason I play soccer now instead of doing acting is because you can not lose anything in translation if people just don't talk and just communicate without words. It's possible and it's fun, and all you need is between your eyes and in your hearts. So if you're not afraid, if you don't have your guard up, and I understand why people have their guard up. I get it. It's hard to put your guard down when you've been hurt over and over and over again, but it takes one person to end the toxic cycle. One person. Thank you, sir.
Nima, I didn't know you until yesterday, but you and I are going to be friends. All right, this story is called The Afghan and the Persian. It's by yours truly. 38 clandestine migrants, including 19 children, died one Saturday night when their vessel came apart off the coast of Italy near a seaside resort just outside Ventimiglia, where dozens of bodies were found strewn on a beach. Another 80 haragas, that is would-be immigrants, on the same vessel survived when the Gulet, a Turkish wooden ship, hit the rocks in bad weather. The ship was smashed to splinters, and debris was found along 500 meters of Italian coastline, only a few kilometers from the border with France. Many of the survivors were from Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iran, and there were migrants from Sudan and Somalia on board. Almost all the survivors were adults, while many of the missing and those found drowned on the beach were children. During triage, Italian authorities, aghast, lined up the little corpses but did not have enough body bags of the right size to go around. The next day, Tamim, a harag and a lover of words and dogs, washed up dirty and disheveled on the beach a few kilometers from Narbonne, having survived the shipwreck that nearly cost him his life. The robust but shaken migrant, aged 35, was then lucky to find refuge in nearby Montpellier, where Afghan Syrians and migrants from Africa were able to gain a foothold. A woman named Rami, with a tan face and long, exquisite fingers, working at the offices of SOS Méditerranée, recorded his full name, date of birth, nationality, and other vitals. He spoke through an interpreter in a mix of Dari and English while drinking chai that he nervously stopped to stir counterclockwise as if he wished he could slow time or turn back the clock altogether. Rami recorded as much of his story as she could and then asked, "Why are you applying for asylum?" You know, the Taliban took over the country and the Americans left, and during the chaos that ensued, they killed my wife. They killed my daughter. Women are no longer permitted to get an education or even to work. I was a professor of literature at Kabul University, where I met my wife. Her name is Rohina Rahimzai. There she met her end. I don't want to talk about her death. You want to know why they killed her? Yes, I want to know why too. You think that they required a reason? Who would put those thugs and murderers on trial? Shall I tell you how my daughter, Mojde, only 6 years old, perished? I am certain you would like to know, but I'm not prepared to talk about that now. I fled the country because people like me who ask too many questions, aren't necessarily good Muslims, who don't revere the Quran above life itself, Those of us readers, we are more likely to be killed than ordinary Afghans who would prefer to live politely and quietly. Why France? Why have I come here? I washed up on your shores as a man who loves books and words and libraries and ideas. I thought by coming here, I could save myself. That is just a little taste of that story, and if you want to know what happens to him in Montpellier, you have to get the book. And the last piece that we'll read is by Natasha Tynes, who's a Jordanian American. It's called The Agency. Noor took meticulous notes on her laptop while her client, Fadi, described his ideal candidate. He was a first-generation Jordanian American with a 1950s mindset. He wanted his future wife to be educated, but didn't want her to work outside the house. Typical, thought Noor. He also wanted her to be between 20 and 25 years old, and he was unwilling to budge. 25 was the absolute maximum he would accept. He preferred a blonde, but was willing to compromise for a brunette. Noor typed away in her office on the third floor of a high-rise building in Amman, while her client talked and smoked what looked like a Cuban cigar. He leaned back on a black leather recliner chair and occasionally looked outside of her office window as if lost in thought. Noor continued to take detailed notes on his future wife's, or El Arus as he called her, height, weight, family status, complexion, and what she had dubbed virginity level. It was a scale that Noor had created after 5 years in the business. It was her trademark. Some of her friends had even encouraged her to patent it. Of course, every one of the candidates should be virgins. There was no question about that, but what really mattered was the level of virginity. There were those whom Noor categorized as pure virgins, who had lived with their parents all their life and had gone to an all-girls school and had almost zero interaction with the opposite sex, with the exception of their fathers and brothers. They had never held a man's hand or were ever found alone behind closed doors with someone from the opposite sex. Then there were those who had experimented with men, a kiss here, a kiss there, and maybe a slight touching of body parts. Noor referred to them as quasi-virgins. Finally, there were those who had kissed, touched, and more, who experimented with various sexual acts, but refrained from the final act of submission, anything but intercourse. On Noor's scale, those were called technical virgins. Noor never, any technical virgins in the audience? No. Noor never dealt with those who were in fact non-virgins. Those were the rare minority, the pariahs, on whom Noor didn't want to take a chance. Dealing with them might have cost her the whole business, so she always rejected their cases. Just the other day, she read on CNN.com about an Iraqi man in Chicago who ran over his daughter because she had become too westernized. The last thing Noor wanted was for her clients to run over their wives because she had made the wrong choice. All right. It's a fun story, but I'm going to stop there. And also, we have an 8-year-old in the audience, so I really have to be careful what I say. Isn't that a good cop-out? So, thank you. Let's have a seat over here, Nima, and we'll chat a little bit. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Yeah. All right. Sound is good. Great. Thank you up there in the booth. Why a collection of short stories? Well, the short story, believe it or not, is a very important art form in the center of the world. I was going to say the Middle East, but I can't do that anymore, can I? In fact, you guys can no longer talk about the Middle East. It's banned. You have to talk about the center of the world. And maybe the center of the world will become the center of attention in a more positive way. Poetry, of course, is extremely important to people from Iran and the Arab world. And we publish quite a lot of poetry, which happens to be curated by our poetry editor, Cholet, who's here tonight. And yes, you can give her a round of applause. So the poetry, a lot of it is translated, and some of the stories are translated. But where would we be without the short story? For one thing, we're all too busy doom scrolling on our phones these days to read long, Anna Karenina length novels. Let's confess, none of you read those long 1,000-page books anymore, right? Or maybe you do. More power to you. But the short story is a compact, in and out, beginning, middle, and end in a few pages. By the way, did you like the short story that Nima read about the husband and wife in Iran? That was pretty good, right? Danielle Hagigi.
Yes.
It's on, I think.
It's on. Does this work? Okay. I think it's very important when you look at if you consider the difference between writing and poetry, because poetry is supposed to come to you, whereas writing you can kind of generate it. There has to be, in any creation, there has to be time for it to grow within itself. Otherwise it dies. It nips itself in the bud. And to build anything with anyone is hard, because to listen and to look and to read is hard. You have to actually put energy into that. It's a lot easier to be destructive. So I think with this couple being in Iran, especially, I like the story a lot because the twist at the end, when I read it, it sounded like another couple in Iran, which is unfortunately what we expect because of the environment there. But the love itself is actually the hope. And so the fact that they can actually have a fight, but he lets her walk away. He lets her go to her mom's house. He's not barring the door. He's not scared to lose her in that sense, because he knows what he has to do to make it happen. And I don't mean this disrespectfully to her, nor did I mean any disrespect in the performance of her. I didn't have a lot of time to really bring out a real woman out of her. I would have tried. But there are times in life where you have to just do things on your own, regardless of who you're with. And that's everywhere the same everywhere. It's just nice sometimes when the community recognizes you're doing it and they help. But if somebody's not actively providing the help, doesn't mean that you're not being noticed or that the work is not being appreciated. It's just timing is everything. And if they give you the help too soon, maybe you get lazy.
Neem, I have a question for
Yes,
you.
sir.
Are you going for an arranged marriage?
I've been known to be able to honor most arrangements, not all arrangements. What happens when you play as a striker and then you play in the goal the second half of the game is you quickly learn, if you don't score the goals in the first half while you're out there on the field, the second half you're just taking shots and you're lucky if you can keep it out. And this is something that most people learn later in life, because we all come to a maturity at some point. We understand our parents are also people and they did the best that they could, and our environment did the best that it could, and that we come to ourselves and we realize we have choice. But if you're a really good Muslim, you still have a choice. You don't have to believe everything in the Quran word for word. It's in the Quran. It says you don't have to take me literally. So if poetry moves you, if you can see a story about a superhero and it moves you to go do something, but you choose to be violent, there's something wrong with you. And it's a part of your being, and you're not being taught how to take care of it. This is one of the things I've noticed as a teacher. When I try to teach nonviolence to my students, some of them play sports that has a lot of contact in it, but you can play the game in a way that there is nobody, like people taking care of each other. And that's, for me, the model for military. I don't want to talk about military.
We're not going to get into the military, but I tell you what I like about your love for soccer is that it is very much a team sport. You don't play it alone, and that's why.
It's no longer a women's sport only in the U.S. Thank God. I want to shout out to American women for all of you, because if you guys had not embraced Pele when the soccer came here, there would be no soccer in the U.S. And I think the World Cup coming here in the 2 years is a great opportunity for everybody to put all this stuff behind and come together again. And I sure as hell hope that it works out that way, because the World Cup is yet another show.
I think we are ready to take questions. If anybody wants to ask anything. Yes.
I think you hear me. How did you put this anthology together?
How did I put it together? Well, I did it secretly. It was just both stories curated that I asked specific writers like Hanif Qureshi. God bless Hanif. He's had a hard time the last year, but and other stories just came in over the transom. For example, there's a story in here by a very young writer named May Haddad, which is a sci-fi story, and it's a lot of fun. But it's sort of, I'd say it was about 50-50. Some of it was just came in, by accident, out of the blue, and the rest were stories that we curated. When we started publishing the Markaz Review in the fall of 2020, and I did most of the fiction editing at first. Well, I was the only editor in the beginning, and then we had gradually added more people. But now there's a literary editor who started last year, and so Malu Halassa has been helping me. And Malu Halassa is a Jordanian Filipina American living in London who's published 8 anthologies, 2 on Iran, 2 on Syria, 1 on Beirut, et cetera, et cetera. So, and by the way, there's another book coming up right behind this one called Samud, A New Palestinian Reader, that we're doing, and I'll be back here in 6 months for that book, and that is a book of stories, poetry, art, and essays. But about this one, does anybody else have any comments or questions before we go? And yes. The main language of the Markaz Review is English, but we translate. Salar Abdo is one of our Persian translators. He's an Iranian-American novelist. But we also translate from Arabic, French. We have translated from Hebrew. We have translated from Kurdish, and Turkish as well. Yeah.
So these writers make a living?
And can writers in like Cairo or in Iran? I don't think that a lot of writers make a living from writing, including in the United States. It's very difficult.
We are dead without our dreams. We tend. There's a wonderful quality to being able to experience things vicariously through other people. And I think that's why we watch videos, films, theater. If somebody else feels something, we feel like we felt it too. But if we felt it, maybe we'd be hurt. But they're strong enough to feel it for us because we're not all built the same. And we're privileged to get to touch people's hearts and minds. But without us, they will still have that experience. And that's the nice thing about not being too attached geographically or nationalistic views. People are quick to say what's un-American, but then you ask them what's American, and then they're buffering for 3 minutes.
So did somebody have a comment? Because there's a statement that I would like to make. Yes. I appreciate that comment, Tony. There was a film that came out a few years ago called Argo by Ben Affleck, which was supposed to represent the hostage crisis in Tehran in 1979, 1980. And I really hated that film because, if you remember, none of the Persian was translated for the whole film until the end. And the hero of the film, of course, is a CIA agent. But the Iranians in the film, if you don't speak Farsi, you don't know what they're saying. And so it's very intimidating. And there's a tendency in the U.S. and to some extent in Europe to be very reductive and to stereotype people that we don't know. Right now, we see the complete dehumanization of the Palestinians, which is nothing new. It's been going on for a long time. But the Arabs who are portrayed in Hollywood are often two-dimensional stereotypes. They're often terrorists. They're often Muslims. Islam is a scary religion. It's always depicted as something that you should be afraid of. And I find it so tiresome and loathsome. And I think I realize that the reason why I've been doing this kind of work for over 20 years is because as a human being, everybody's humanity is important to me. Like I said earlier, if one group isn't free, then the rest of us are not free either. So, yes. Speak up, please.
There was an editor from a major national publication. I don't want to tell you which one, but that's not the point. And I asked her why they don't publish a lot of translated literature, right, from different parts of the world. And her response was that because all the non-Western work is so political. And it's always about this trauma. And so she didn't say it the way I'm saying it, but that's how I heard it. That it's always the same narrative, the song of misery and, the trauma speak and so on and so forth. And then she ended by saying, until I can find someone in the Middle East who's like Beckett or, that kind of writing, unfortunately, there's really not much of a market. So this is the context for my question. This is a catch-22, right? Because if the major editors in this country are saying, we want to publish these people, but they're still crying. We want to publish stuff which doesn't have that kind of explicit reference. So my question is, how do you navigate that? I mean, I know City Lights is very different, but how do we get this kind of work? I struggle in my own classes. How do you get this to possibly change consciousness? Because most people have no idea.
Well, thank you for asking that. The New York Times published a study 4 years ago now, in which they studied the books, the novels, and literary nonfiction that was published in the United States between like 1950 and 2015, and 98% of it was by white people, usually white men. So 2% went to other cultures, translation, whatever. Pathetic, right? We have our, maybe not Beckett's, because Beckett was unique, but we have, in this book and in a lot of the writers that I know, there are many writers who are from Iran or from Arab countries who are very unique and articulate, and it's almost magic realism or it's speculative fiction or whatever. They exist, and that editor was, I have to say, ignorant, because she didn't seem to be aware of, there's Yusuf Raha, Abu Layla, May al-Nakib. There's dozens of writers already publishing in English, and many more coming behind who are going to be translated, some by us and others. So there are publishers that try to do a good job. Saki Books in London, City Lights to some extent, Seven Stories Press, and quite a few others. I know Cholet knows publishers who are interested in publishing Iranian poetry, for example. She's translated quite a few books. But that's an important question. We need as readers to get out of our comfort zone and actually go into a bookstore and say, I want to travel. I want to learn about other countries. Are there any writers you can recommend who maybe are from, the from Lebanon, for example. I mean, do you know how many great Lebanese writers there are? I mean, Hanan al-Sheikh and Elias Khouri, and there are tons. There are absolutely tons. Rabi Alameddin, Lebanese but writes in English, lives in San Francisco, or used to anyway.
Can I just say something also to that? Since you said that it's in your classes that you struggle with it, I'm assuming you're the teacher of the class, right? You could kill yourself for your students, and they could stand there and laugh at your face. That doesn't mean they don't get it. That just means they don't take you as seriously as the ultimate truth. And because in their minds it's so innocent and pure, there is our salvation. Right? So if you're feeling something like that, they make you feel that they don't get it. God bless you, because you get it. And you can actually do something with it. Even if it's just telling those stories in a more interesting manner for them in the class, just so it absorbs them more. You can act. Yeah.
Not for the past 20 years. And I asked them a simple question. Name me one thing from those cultures. Writer, artist, footballer, soccer player, anything. Anything. This is an elite university, right?
Yeah.
Zero. So these students are the 1%ers. They will be in positions of power. I can't even talk about the ones who are going to public.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you were talking about younger kids.
No, it's university students. So the fact that they cannot name a single, not even a singer, not even anything, nothing, because they have drunk the propaganda, which is that these are terrorists. Yeah. So this is not just about truth. There's utter silence, and they don't accept it as a direct.
Yeah, there's a deficit. There's a cultural deficit. All the people in Iran or in any Arab country you can name dozens of Western writers and actors, but we can't do the same about their cultures. Yeah.
But it makes a difference.
Yes.
Sorry.
Can I have the mic?
By all
I
means,
talk on the
absolutely.
phone as an attorney, so I'm a bit tired. So first a comment, and then I have a couple of questions for Jordan, who's been a friend. I met Jordan about 2007 when I moved to the LA area from DC, and it was at an event, a cultural event, and this was like the post 9/11 days, and I'm Afghan American, so we were like in the center of this, and we connected, and I was on the board of Levantine Cultural Center. So many events that Jordan would put together, including one, and I brought a copy, just had one with me, of my father's book called Turbulence, which was his journey trying to battle corruption in Afghanistan as kind of like the good Afghan American going back, only to find out that our government was colluding with the drug dealers and trying to cover up for the opium trade, and he got targeted. And then my life as an attorney went to trying to get him out and make sure that Interpol notice that he had on him didn't affect him. And it was a really, difficult time, because as a hyphenated, not Afghan, not American, you're trying to bridge this gap. And what I found through my journey, and now we're seeing it again, is the stories that people in the West, I find that it's not just about color, it's about the ruling classes, right? Because you see how many of the Arab countries are not really taking a stand because of the money that they have and the wealth that they want to accumulate. So I think I moved away more from thinking this is about the West and the East and about, whites versus non-whites, because people don't know Afghans are Aryan, right? The Pashtuns, and they're Caucasian. And so you can say, okay, well, we're really technically white. I never knew a box to check, right, on those forms of what ethnicity I am, because we don't really, we're not accepted, even though we're racially Caucasian. But then the white people that you would say, Europeans would say, no, you're not. So then I became, I'm a human being, and this is who I am. And I just have to say, Jordan, I remember all those struggles of the narratives and trying to kind of get acceptance for people. And we were those representatives trying to do it. And what I noticed in the narratives of films is that when we say the West, of course, everyone sees themselves as like the center of their own world, right? So the stories, what do we have on film about Afghanistan, is mostly the soldiers going there and being the white savior, saving everyone, right? or when there are stories about Afghan women, it's that they were oppressed in some ways, and it was the Afghan men oppressing them, and you don't hear the stories of how they're being, oppressed by outside cultures. So that's like the narrative or story that people want to hear, and that's what sells when you were talking about why isn't there interest? Because sometimes as an Afghan American woman, I was seen as, oh, you're too strong. If you're the one doing the saving, we don't want to tell your story, right? So it's like, you have to be the one that we are saving. And so I think that is the mentality. And I really believe film, books, this is the way to have people's mindsets change, because then they can relate to another human being. And I really commend you for coming out with this book. I haven't seen you in a while. And my question to you is, now that you went from LA to Europe, are you finding this similar narrative? Does it run deeper there because of the refugee issues? Because another subset of what I've seen in my life, now I'm doing a lot of, asylum work. And I never thought I'd be doing that work because of the crisis that happened, where all the Afghans were coming to the US because of the US withdrawal, right? And there's this sense that, okay, these parts of the world were creating the problems, and we're asking the people, well, why do you want to leave that area and come to where we are? Stay where the problem is, right? So are you finding that in Europe there's more work to be done? Does it run deeper, this narrative of overcoming? Sorry for the long, I just wanted to share that
for that.
story
So
with
I
you.
just want to say, Mariam, that I don't want to save you. It's way too late for her. But okay, seriously, France has a long relationship with North Africa, obviously. France and Algeria, Morocco and Tunisia, etc. So the relationship with France and its North African population is akin to California and its Mexican American population. So there are a lot of problems. There's a lot of understanding, but because of the Syrian civil war and all of the other conflicts that have occurred, there've been way too many. Millions of refugees wanting to come into Europe, and all of the European governments, they're pushed back from the right wingers not to accept, because as our former president says, they bring crime, they bring drugs. There's this kind of false narrative about immigrants that they don't bring anything that's good. Actually, a lot of the stories in here are by immigrants or children of immigrants, and there's a quote in there by Edward Said, who says that a lot of the accomplishments are ones from refugees and exiles, certainly in this country. So there's still a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment in Europe, and it's always exacerbated by the right-wing politicians like Giorgia Meloni in Italy, and some of the right-wingers in Spain and in France. But I find that people, at least the French people that I talk to, are more informed than the average American about these issues, and less likely to fall for the jingoism. Yeah. We have time for maybe one or two more questions.
I was
then
just
we're
going to say,
eat.
some of us Americans get to be naive, right? That's the pleasure of actually having all these good things, but that doesn't mean that it's actually a bad thing. It's up to the teachers to make sure that the young ones learn it. But the issue we're facing now, at least I know as a teacher I face, is I don't get an opportunity to actually talk about those things with the students. These things that you want to teach somebody to not be a victim, but also not be an aggressor. Like, many people have a hard time staying in the middle because they feel like if they don't pick a side, they're stupid. And that's just not true.
So
that's just not true.
So we're more sophisticated if we don't take a side.
No. The observer
that's a question. Is that you said no? Are you sure?
We're more sophisticated if we take a side. That's a question? That sounds like a statement.
No. I mean,
I'm sorry. I'm not. Try me again.
Do we have to take a side? No. Can we be lovers of poetry and love all people, or do we have to choose my tribe over your tribe?
I think if you have love for yourself and you take pride in who you are, then it resonates differently than if you feel like you have to love somebody because they're in your house. And I think it's very important that people hold on to what their beliefs of who they are, and also try to actually learn about other people and try to respect it. Not just, if you really learned something, you don't need somebody to tell you twice. And if you've lived with someone for 20 years and you still need them to explain stuff to you, maybe you just haven't been paying attention to them enough.
Okay. Thank you. Got time for one last question. Anybody else? Yes.
Hi there.
Hi.
I address something that Nima said to our professor friend earlier, and it kind of ties into why we're here to begin with. He suggested, we were talking about the futility of being in a classroom with, kids that are 20 to 25, and his job as an educator, he's trying to teach about this part of the world, and he's saying we've collectively experienced, many years of war, and they can't name one artist, one person. And we're talking about the center of the world. I highly recommend, an Afghan Tamim Ansari, who wrote a book called The History of the World, Destiny Disrupted, the history of the world through Islamic eyes. So I highly recommend that. But
Destiny Disrupted, yes. Tamim Ansari.
Yes, but I found a fallacy in Nima's question, because there is a futility in being one professor, and I feel like when we're trying to confront this juggernaut, we think of ourselves as individuals, but there isn't a communitarian through line of the things that we do, and I feel like community is what's going to help us. So what I want to know is, what can we as people in this room, not as individuals, but as people of a community, do to hold more spaces in which we are amplifying voices from the center of the world.
Don't be afraid to give a piece of yourself as a teacher to your student, even if the rules say otherwise.
Yes, but he does that already.
No, he doesn't even get the reception from his students to give a piece of himself. They're closed-minded. He's trying his hardest, but they're not really actually giving.
I think we're speaking on his behalf.
It's totally.
Sorry.
No. But I'll give you an answer. I think interracial marriage, dating interculturally, this is 2024, interracial marriage in this country is like 11%. I have students, I have friends who will say, yes, I date all kinds of people. When it comes to marriage, we are living in the 50s. Nothing will change. Zero. And I think we have to start this conversation at home. When a 50-year-old father tells the son or daughter, you gotta marry in the same group, that harks back to a different time. And I think until that changes, nothing's gonna change. It's just make believe.
How about we do what the mom's saying in the house instead of what the dad says?
Like that.
The point is that, we should ask ourselves in our own lives, how open are we to other people, or how much are we concerned about preserving our culture?
Well, I for one would marry anyone from any culture, any race. It doesn't matter to me. All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I hope to see you outside. I'm going to go into the bookstore to sign books, and I will give you a bookmark. Thanks to everyone, including Nima.